Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight we're going to talk about what is expected of you if you want to have a job where you use Python. Let us just jump right into it as usual. The first thing you should know is actually you should know some IDEs that actually support Python. That is maybe your question could be to your future boss. What kind of IDs do you prefer here at this place? Of course, you can use your own IDs. So you not have to use the same IDs as your colleagues does. That's a cool thing about Git and stuff like that. That you can use whichever integrated development environment IDE as you wish. PyCharm is a good choice. There's both a community edition that does not support HTML and style sheets, and then there's the paid version that also supports the HTML and style sheet. And then there's Visual Studio Code. It is cool. It's awesome. It's very fast. I think PyCharm has a little bit more features for Python, but because it's minded to Python. But Visual Studio Code is a bit faster because it does not index all the files right away and stuff like that. It's based on Atom, and you can just add the Python. Plugin in the site. So both of those are excellent choices for Python development. Another thing you need to know is you need to know which current version is being used. That is 3.10.2, and it's just good to know which version is currently the most recent one. And then you need to know how to handle your dependencies, because if you just install all of these packages that is needed into the default Python installation folder, then you will get a cluttered installation folder, and you will probably at some point you could end up in having dependencies that actually contradict each other because maybe you need a specific dependency in a certain version for one project, and then you need it in another version for another project. That's exactly why we are using virtual environment or Anaconda. Anaconda is also excellent for handling and solving this problem right here. For this demonstration that I'm going to show you in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to use Anaconda. And I've also showed you how to actually use Anaconda with PyCharm in other videos. I'm using WSL. That means that I have Windows, and then I have a Windows subsystem for Linux installed on that. That means I'm running actually Ubuntu inside the WSL, and then I'm running Windows. So all my drivers and my games actually work. So that's why I have that set up. And here we have a bit about virtual environments. Virtual is also cool. It also solves the problem. You need to know that there is something called a requirements.txt file that is located in the root of the folder, where you would mention all of your dependencies that you need to install. And that means that as soon as you take out a Python project, then the first thing you would actually do is to look at the requirements.txt file. If you're using PyCharm, it will actually try to help you to install those dependencies as soon as you're up and running. Then there's another thing you need to know about. That is the PEP8 standard. And this is actually how when should you use snake case, when should you use camel case, how many blank lines should there be after a function. That is exactly how should the indentation be used. Should you use tab or spaces? That is what this PEP8 standard will actually tell you. So you need to know about this. Also, that limit all lines to maximum 79 characters, and of course, this is historic reasons right here that we have that in old days we had screens that were maximum had 80 characters or 79 characters width. So that's probably why that has been chosen right there. So, but there's a lot of standards, and it's good to have. I have a fun joke. Standards are great. That's why there are so many of them. But that is not the case with this PEP8. This you need to you need to know about this PEP8 standard, and you need to follow it, or else you could get some remarks from your new colleagues at your potentially new job where you use Python. Another thing, your future boss might ask you to the job interview, if you know about any web framework for Python, and then you need to know a little bit about Flask. So you need to mention Flask, and you also need to mention something called Django Python, which is right here. So mention Django and mention Flask, then you will be your boss can also check those technologies off, that you know a little bit about those. That is pretty cool, and it's very fast to create web applications with both of these technologies right here. I've created other videos about those, both Django and Flask, so feel free to look into that at some point if you want to. And then we have, yeah. So that's the basic knowledge that you need to have. I'm not going to show you how to install Anaconda and to set it up with PyCharm in this video because I've done that in other videos right here. One thing, I will show you the setting just quickly. But you need to follow the installation that I've made in another video if you want to do all of it. So Python, which Python is SDK am I using? Python right here. Python interpreter, that's what I meant. Here you can see if I go to Python interpreter inside PyCharm, I press Ctrl-Alt-S to get to the settings menu, and then I can just search, as you just saw, then I can search for Python interpreter, and then I can get the list of my interpreters right here. And you can see the way that you actually use Anaconda and the environments right there is that you actually go and then you point directly into the environment folder. So we have Anaconda 3 right there, then we have the int folder, and then you point to the environment that you've created, you point into the bin folder, and you point to the Python executable that is located in there. That is how you use WSL and Python and Anaconda together. Yeah. So that's actually, let me just cancel this and let us go to some code because, of course, and here we have the requirements.txt file. If you don't know about pandas, you should also look into that. That would also be probably expected that you know a bit about all of these pandas data, how to handle and treat the data with pandas. It is a very cool library. Let us just look at some code. First of all, here we have the declared types. When you have a class, like I'm creating a class right here named Spaceship, then you can actually use declared types as the member variables. I'm using colon, and then I'm actually mentioning the types. I like to do that because then my other colleagues they know this type is actually intended right here. Of course, when you are setting it on the first line, of course you don't have to actually use the type right here. It's just good information to have for other people so they can see what was your intent when you created this class right here. Here we have a function, and as we can see right here, it returns a string. So it's also good, even though you don't have to add the signature information right here, then do it anyway because it's just, it's a good idea to add that. It's information that shows something about what is your intent with this function right here. Right here, you can actually see clearly that it returns a string that we have right here. Let us just run this program right here. Spaceship and greeting, and here we are using the format right here. We're returning it, and then we're printing it out. And we get hello, we have 20 aboard, and the name is Pyramid right there. So you can always just right click, and then you can press run if you want to run a Python file. And you also need to know that you can actually run all files that ends on .py by just writing Python and then the name of the file. So again, that's good to know. And the Python is very good for scripting, but it's also good for larger projects, of course. So then we have the dynamic types. Python is a dynamically typed language, so you can actually assign one type to a variable at some point, and then you can actually assign another type, like here. First it is a string. Up here it's a string, and here it's actually an integer instead. And here we go through them with the for loop. The Pythonic way to go through stuff with the for loop is always to go through a list or a dictionary of data. The Java way is actually to create an index and then start with 0 and then do something like 4 times. But the Pythonic way is actually to go through a list, and that's why we have this range function right here. So we call range. We actually create a list with 4 numbers that starts with 0 and ends with 3. And here we print them out. So let me just run this file also right here. Hello, 0, and then up to 3. So that is how we go through the for loop. You also need to know that we are not using curly brackets like we do in Java. We are using indentations instead. So that means that this is our for loop, and then we have an indentation right here. Spaces are preferred, but you can also use tabs. I actually use tabs, I must say. So it's a bit faster to just type tabs. Your IDE can actually be set up so it actually every time you press the tab button, it will actually create like 4 tabs or maybe 2 tabs, whatever you set it up to be. It just needs to be consistent. Error handling, you need to know that there's something named exceptions, and that you can create your own exceptions, like I have right here. I've created my custom exception named too old, and this extends. This is how we extend with classes. This is to extend the exception, which is built into the Python language. It needs actually these custom exceptions right here. They just need to extend the base exception. But you can also, since the exception actually extends the base exception, then you can then it is normal practice that you just extend the exception right here. Pass means that there's no code inside this class right here. It's just I just want to create it empty. And here we have a try area right here, and then we actually raise the exceptions ourselves. Usually these exceptions would be raised by your libraries, and then you will have to catch them and handle them afterwards. But here, if the age is first, we ask the user for what is your age, and then if it's less than 20, value error, and if it's larger than 200, then too old, and then we catch the exceptions down here, and we print something out, or depending on which exception that we actually reach. And it's important for you to know that an exception is not an error. An error is something that will make your program stop, while an exception is just it's just an exception. It's something special that happens in your code, and you will, of course, handle it as you should. First, we say 10 years old, and then we say that you're too young for this program. Use this program. We press play again, and this time we'll write 300, and you're too old to use this program. This time I'm going to press Ctrl Shift F10 just to run it again, just to show some shortcut keys. And here I'm going to write 45 instead. And your age is 45. That means that we ended up in this line right here, and we did not end up in any exceptions. List and dictionary. So you need to know what a list is. That it's defined with square brackets like this, and there's a very nice and easy to use string representation of it. If you come from Java, then you'll probably hate the Java string representation for arrays and lists. But in Python, it's actually pretty cool. It actually shows the values. I'll show you that in just a minute. Then we have the dictionaries, that is with curly brackets like this, and there's a key and then there's a value. The keys, they actually do not have to be strings. You just need to be something unique. So it could be 2.0, and then the value could be 500 or something like that. So you can have a dictionary where you have the key equal to an integer actually. So it can also be an object. Usually, though, it is actually strings. That's that I would say. But of course, it's up to you to create your dictionary as you wish. The string representation of your dictionary is also awesome in Python. That's also something that's good to know. You need to know how to fetch one value from a key, and that can be done like this. It can also be done in other ways, but this is the Pythonic default way to get the value from a from a key inside a dictionary. And then we have the loop. If you want to loop through items in a list, then it's quite easy. For item in my list, and then you can just print them out like this. If you want to go through a dictionary, then you would usually go through the items you would usually call items. And that is if you both need the key and the value. Of course, if you only need the values, you can just call values and go through the values as a normal list. But if you both need the key and the value, do not do what many beginners do. They actually say that I want to go through all the keys, and then the first line, then they actually get the value right here, and then as the third line, then they could actually print it out. If you both need the key and the value, you will just write it like this: key, comma, value, and then get it from the items. If you do something else, it will just show you that that you're not comfortable with dictionaries and that you're new to Python. So. And your colleagues might laugh at you. So that's also very bad, right? Then you have right here, literals underscore demo. This is because you cannot create, there's some reserved words. You cannot create variables with all of these reserved words right here. And that is simply because those are part of the language, and you do not have to remember all of them. But if you get an error like this, then of course you have to know that this is because that you're trying to assign to a keyword. And yeah, there's a lot of keywords. This is actually this is a Boolean value, true. So, but you can actually change it like this: var underscore true, like this. Now I have fixed it. Var underscore if underscore elif. So now it's actually okay, right? You need to start your variables with a letter, and then you can actually use numbers if you want to inside your variables, but it's not recommended. Just use for variables you'll use lowercase characters, and then you use snake case. That means you use underscore to separate words, not camel case. Let us go to the pip8 standard because that is actually quite interesting. Here you can see that the classes are camel case. So all the classes are written with camel case, space, capital S, capital ship, and then we have all the member variables. Those are with snake case and lowercase, and the same with our functions. And we need to have two blank lines after a. Let me just check what it complains about here. Yeah, it could be static, but that's okay. And then there's something about the number of lines also, that you need to have two blank lines after the a function, like we have it right here. Let us just run this program right here to just see if it actually works. Flyway bus bus. We forgot to run this program right here with the lists and the dictionaries. Let us just do that. Here you can see the string representation of the dictionary. Looks quite cool. It almost looks like a JavaScript object, right? So, and here we have our lists. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. It's awesome. It's very easy to use. Then we have something with inheritance, and this is very important. This is important in all languages, and it's also important in Python. If you want to create a package, just create a new folder. You need to place the init underscore init underscore the py file. You need to create a file like that. And if you place some code inside that file, then that will be executed once one of the classes inside them, one of the modules actually inside them are used. And you can only import modules from a folder if you have added that underscore init file there. So it's just something you need to know, that if you're trying to create a package, add that init file, init.py file. A lot of times it will be blank. There will be no code that needs to be run. Sometimes you will place some init code there right there that will actually initialize some data or whatever. But most of the times it would actually just be blank. Then we have a class right here. We have cargo. So there's a cargo class that has the price and has insurance as two member variables. Then I've all written the to string representation right here, and that is actually underscore string. And then I create a nice to string representation for this class right here based on the member variables. That's also good practice, always to overwrite the string representation and use the member variables, because it's much easier to debug and see what is actually going on. Then I have a fruit right here that extends the cargo. This is the way we extend other classes, that is by mentioning them in the round brackets like this. And then we have that's actually, then we can call super when we are running the constructor, the initializer. Then we can call the super constructor like this, super, and then init, and then we can actually say that the price for this was 10, and it's not insured. So we set this to false, and then we have added a new member variable, which is if it's rotten or not, the fruit. And there's of course a part of the string representation. We both have the super to string representation, and we have also added our own member variable representation. A bit the same with the minerals right here. We have minerals that extends cargo also right there. And again, I'm overriding the constructor right there, and I'm calling the super constructor. And then I'm setting some other variables, and then I am also overriding the to string representation right there. And then I can call my code in this main program right here. And look what I'm doing right here. I am protecting this code and saying this code can only be run if this is the Python file where the program actually started in. So if another Python file is being run, and this file right here is being imported for some reason, then this code right here will not be run. It will only be run when when name equals to main, as we can see right here. That means that it's only if the Python program actually started at this point. This is a good way to protect your colleagues from running code when they're not supposed to run it. Here I'm creating some minerals. This is how you create a new object in Python. You just mentioned the class there. You don't need the new keyword as you do with Java. Then we have bananas right here, which is and that is a fruit. And then I just print out the objects like this, and this will actually reach the to string representation, and then it will console out that I'll right click right here, Control Shift F10, and then we get a lot of cool output. First, we get the cargo package code is being called. That means that this init file, the code in here, was actually called only once, and it was only called when we created the mineral type the first time. Here we have the price of some minerals, insurance true, mineral type crystals. Then we have some diamonds right here. Then we have the fruit string representation in the bottom right here. It's not insured, and the fruit is not rotten. That was pretty lucky. So that is actually it. And furthermore, I would actually say that a lot of your future boss might actually don't care that much about how much Python you actually know. What he actually would weight higher is that you are a nice person, and you are nice to work with, and that you seem like a person that would be cool to sit in the long hours. It's not long hours always, but that he could work with, and some person that would actually that has this team spirit that he probably needs. So it's usually more like the personal traits that is important than whether you know how to manipulate a dictionary or a list the most efficient way, or how to create a cool sort mechanism, or how to use the most optimal sort mechanism if you have a list with millions of entries. Um, that is usually not the most important thing, because you can just Google that and go to Stack Overflow to look that up, right? So, but the most important thing is that you can actually fit into the current team that he has right there. Another good tip I can give you is that you should always be curious at job interviews. Ask questions to to the team who you'll be working with. What kind of technology is being used? What does it do? Is it a big company? Is it expanding? Just ask many curious questions that actually shows the boss that you're actually interested in what they're doing, and it would be a good match that to have you there. And then, of course, just be yourself. There's also no reason in getting a job where you afterwards you think this is boring after 2 weeks, and you already knew that. Then, of course, you're just wasting everybody's time. So be honest both to your potential boss and also to yourself, of course. So, or just be honest. Yeah, those are my tips and tricks if you want to work with Python. Another thing could actually be how to find a job, but I would leave that out because that actually depends on where you are, and if you want to be a contractor. If you want to be a contractor, there's usually some middle, some middle men or women that would actually that has all the connections. Sometimes you would have the connection yourself. If you want a job yeah, if you want a steady job, then usually sometimes there will be a headhunter in between. Maybe you're lucky that you can just yeah, but then maybe you would just go online and put your profile in some of those job banks, and then you find your job there. It is it is usually very easy to find jobs if you are a programmer. No, almost no matter where you are in the world, in most places actually, because you can work remotely on we saw. So yeah, that's actually it. Let us stop it here. So I hope you liked this video. Have a great evening, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.